Welcome to the Real Estate Talk podcast with myself, Oliver Ingalls, and my esteemed co-host, as always, Benji Weinberger. If you take any hints, any tips, any little nuggets of gold from today's podcast, we would love for you to like, subscribe, and please share it to all your friends and family.
I went into quite a dark place at that time. What the fuck are you talking about? I had to own up and take the responsibility for it.
Did they take the piss out of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really hurt. I lost some really dear clients. I took my eye off the ball.
But I think people would say he's a genuinely nice guy and will always have your best interests at heart.
Oh, thank you.
Adam Dockley.
Adam is a real estate pro with over 25 years of experience. He is currently a broker at London House, and you have to tune in to find out why Adam brands himself as the anti-agent.
Adam also tells us on today's podcast about how and why his previous business had to close. And he will also dive into his experiences learning from the Asia marketplace, spending every weekend selling property.
Let's go.
Mr. Adam Dockley.
Hello.
Mate, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure of ours. I was speaking to Benji about you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Good. And because Benji
I was going to say, what?
Yeah, Benji obviously hadn't met you before.
No.
Okay. And he said to me, "What's Adam like?" And I said, "If you saw him walking down the street, you would not go estate agent."
No.
But and so we're quite looking forward to diving into today's podcast with you to find out a bit about you and your history and your thoughts also on the real estate market now and going forward, because a bit like we had Igor on, didn't we, a couple of months back, who doesn't go by the normal codes and conduct and regulations of what you should dress and look like and how you should speak, etc. And I think you're probably in that mold as well.
Yeah, I think so. I've always tried to be authentically me.
Yeah.
And I was never a cookie cutter agent, broker. I started out my career not like that. So I felt that I was a little bit different, and my clients sort of reacted that way as well. That the more I came out of myself into who I am, the more they connected to me and were like, actually, yeah, you're not just feeding me.
Yeah.
You're
can swear.
telling me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt like actually in the last 5 years, actually, even since I stopped my own business, I've actually pushed myself even further into that and really sort of engaged with who I am rather than, who I felt I had to be.
I love that.
And then you feel you're getting genuine relationships and connections with your clients.
Yeah,
you're being
exactly.
yourself.
And getting invited to things via them and it works, right? For some people. And I'm very lucky that it opens a lot of doors for me. I to be honest with you, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday that I don't have a huge amount of like close friends in the industry. All my friends are outside of the industry in various different other industries. Yeah. And, but I look at some of the guys that I've worked with over the years and they're all still like best mates. Like they go to each other's houses at the weekends and stuff. And I'm like, oh, maybe, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Maybe they don't want to be hanging around.
I've been invited around for dinner for months.
No,
I love that. And look, I think we'll get onto a bit of like imposter syndrome and talk about that in a little bit. But how we obviously just like to start our podcast is just by quickly kind of diving back into like your childhood, you know. So give us a quick snippet of like where you grew up, what like life with your, at home was like and schooling. Give us a bit of a lead.
So I grew up in Hertfordshire, Hertford and around that area. My mother was in property before I was born. She actually worked around here in the West End. And my stepmother was a marketing director for a developer.
Okay.
And so from a very early age, I was walking around site with a hard hat on and a clipboard, thinking that this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Schooling was... I'm not academic. I have if I was tested now, I have ADHD and I have dyslexia. That's not for me. To the point where one of my old bosses said, "Look, you pass over the paperwork and let someone else deal with it, because you're very good in front of clients and you're very good at tying up deals, but your paperwork is atrocious.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, at least I know.
Yeah.
So then, like, going self-employed, that was like, whoa, hold on a minute, I've got to do all this on my own.
Yeah.
But then, so school was for me more of a training ground for meet and greeting, introducing. I wasn't in the popular gang, but all my friends that I'm with now sort of were, and that sort of opened doors. And then they introduced me to people, and it sort of started. I guess when I got to leaving school, actually, my character really came out, because I think I felt like I couldn't really be me at school, because there were a lot of big characters in my year. So I played rugby, which got me noticed. Well, being nearly 6 foot at the age of 15 was pretty much going to get you noticed. Yeah, exactly. Wow. I was a big lad, and I enjoyed rugby, but it was unfortunately something that I couldn't sort of pursue professionally. I wasn't that good. But
it's interesting because, there is a clear correlation between a lot of us, isn't there, with schooling? Okay. And so many people have said, I couldn't quite be myself, or I felt, you're pushed into school uniform, you're pushed into certain lessons, and you don't really feel like you should be there at times.
Yeah.
How is that hard? And how do you think that the education system actually should change to adapt to what kids are like nowadays?
I think we went, I'm a bit older than you guys, but I went to a school where, it was all math, science, English, and most of the stuff I learned, I've never used, so I think it's an archaic system. We'll get onto this later, which I think there's a lot of archaic systems in this country, which I think you're probably going to agree with me, but it is an archaic system that was right for when people went and got jobs as a farmer, a miner, or a teacher, a doctor, those sorts of jobs. Now there's so many different avenues to take. Who would have thought that I'd be a self-employed real estate broker? At the age of 14, when I had my first job in real estate on a Saturday, I wasn't child labour. Well, I probably was, but I thought that I was just going to be an estate agent, or maybe a chartered surveyor, and that would be my in. But now, with the whole social media explosion, with marketing generally, you can go down so many different avenues and just be whoever you want to be.
So do you think, because it's really interesting starting working at 14, do you think you learned more in terms of personal skills from that than you would have at school?
I think that a mix of that, and my parents always introduced me to their friends, and I always was at the dinner table with their friends, having conversations with their friends. They were always including me with, we're going out for dinner, they'd go out they basically got on with their lives and I went along with them. And I feel that I was very lucky in that regard, that and that wasn't taken away from me being a kid, because obviously there was other kids there and I'd go and play with them. But I always remember being sat at the dinner table and injecting into conversations that I felt that I had something to say.
Nice.
And I think that helped me when I started the first job I had was working for a country house agent in Hertfordshire as a Saturday boy. And I was answering the phones. So I was answering the phones to people that were ringing up about £1 million, £2 million, £3 million properties. And I was having a conversation with them, like, what do you do? Like, I was always taught, like, get into their head, get them to get to understand what they're looking for. You know, they're not buying just another 1-bed apartment or a 3-bedroom semi. They are people that have got ideas on what they want and know what they want. So talk to them about their family, talk to them about their pets, talk to them about their hobbies, and that I think has what I've always sort of gone with whenever I was speaking to people.
It's so interesting, isn't it, that how long are we in education for? Let's say from like year 7 to like 5 or 6 years, we're in like solid education, 5 days a week. A Saturday job where you worked 9 till 5 or whatever it was has almost taught you more skills than literally the whole 8 years or 9 years of education. Not, the basics, of course, at school, but that gave you more of an upbringing of talking to people and communicating and building relationships, and your character came out. And that is mental, isn't it, to think about that?
Well, and also, I think now, because so many of us are self-employed, I'm not just talking about real estate, I'm talking about people generally, you don't get taught about tax, VAT, how to set up a company, nothing. You get, or even like pensions, personal stuff, nothing, mortgages, and this was something that I thought long and hard about, was to set up something for kids to be able to do on a Saturday, was to go and learn about that sort of stuff. They'd probably not be interested.
Wicked idea, though.
But if you could make it interactive for them, and they could do something on their laptops or iPads or whatever, and they're learning that sort of stuff. Because I found when I started working in Asia, that the children from a very, very young age were taught how to invest.
Really?
Yeah, and what investment meant. And there was guys coming into our exhibition rooms that are like 17, 18 that had already invested. They already knew what they were looking for and how to invest, and they were talking to me about yields and stuff like that. And I'm a 30-something guy, and I'm listening. I'm like, wow, you know you're on this.
Educated.
Yeah.
Mate, that is really interesting, isn't it? That's a really good idea, actually. I think I've spoke about it quite openly on different social platforms over the last couple of months. I'm trying to educate Alfie more and more, and starting off, and he's 4 years old now. Because we're learning now at 34. Okay.
Yeah.
And if I knew, it's that old saying, if I wish that what I knew now when I was younger, that song, isn't it? But if I knew what I knew 10 years ago, bloody hell, where would I be even now in my life, I know. And we're not taught that.
But it doesn't look like the education system is anywhere close to changing. Like, as you said, I can't imagine how many people that come out of the education system that go to uni that are financially illiterate. Like, and I was there, like when I left, learning how to budget and those sort of things. You don't. You absolutely don't. And then, if you look now, when I left my previous business, I was 28. I had no clue about these things. Like, I'm an adult and I knew nothing about. Fine, you can go and educate yourself and try and learn more. And I have done that since. And I know you've, taken steps to look at how you can invest money and those sort of things. But why are we doing that now in our 30s?
Yeah. Like, why weren't we doing that in our teens and our 20s?
Yeah. But I think, we're fortunate that we're perhaps of an age that, with Alfie, and I don't know if you've got kids, but when, please God, we have kids, that we will teach our kids those sort of things, which I think our generations haven't taught us.
Yeah. But I think that's only because we're in a smaller percentage that know about it now. I think if you, like you said, we're learning. If you look at your friends, okay, if you look at your broad 10 friends, okay, how many of them are doing that? How many of them know that? None. So if they don't know it, you can't teach your son or daughter if you don't know it.
Yeah.
So it's the fundamentals of the education.
It's got to be at the bottom. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what happened after school? You came out of school with A-levels?
No.
GCSEs.
Yeah.
So you left after GCSEs. What was the next
I knew
step?
what I was doing.
Yeah.
That was it. I was in.
Yeah.
Fully. I was being an estate agent. That was the world. And even to my parents' disgust, they were like, come on, you're going to do your A-levels? And I was like, nah.
Yeah. How did they react to that?
They knew I wasn't academic. So they were probably like, oh, good. He's, at least he won't save himself the embarrassment of screwing it up. So I think they probably took that view. But I just knew as soon as I was working in that estate agent's Churchill's. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, Churchill's. Yes, yeah, in Hertford.
So I had two amazing mentors in Alan Brown, God rest his soul, and Phil Godfrey.
Yeah.
And Phil, I'm still very close with. I'm very lucky to, even the other day I had an issue and I phoned him up and we were having a chat and chatting it through. But they gave me the grounding of being able to be where I got to, or where I've got to today.
Yeah.
So after those, I had a couple of stints in Hertfordshire, and then I moved into London in 2003. Got a job in Canary Wharf. I got offered a job in Shoreditch, got offered a job in Canary Wharf, and I just saw that Canary Wharf was going somewhere. And I also had this weird, almost like spiritual connection with the water. I'm Pisces.
Yep. So
I've always had, and I'm a little bit spiritual anyway.
Yeah.
But I had this connection with the water. My stepmom dealt with the development in Docklands, and I always remember the conversation of driving through the Docklands with her, and I'm being like, why would anyone want to live here?
Yeah.
And she was like, you wait, watch. And then I just saw Canary Wharf going off. And the first job was like boiler room.
Yeah.
It was full of lads. Everyone was like, obviously it was commission, not just commission based. You were getting a salary, but it was, we were vying. And there was a lot of big characters in there as well.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm going to be different. And I started the way that I'd always been taught, which was get to understand the client, even make them for a coffee, take them coffee in the morning when they're doing viewings. And like the boys in the office, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why are you spending money on these people? And I was like, listen, trust me.
Just what?
Yeah. And I've got a client now that I've bought, sold, and now manage their property, and they're they've introduced me to so many people.
And that started back in that.
And that started literally at that office. I was there for 5 years, became manager, and then went and set up an office in Blackheath. And I was living in Hertfordshire at the time, and I was driving from Hertfordshire to Blackheath every morning. And I was just like, why am I doing this? This is crazy.
But for the people listening, there is one of the best bits of advice that anyone listening should take from that, isn't there? You know, and, you know, that whole relationship-based game now, you know, where you actively, you know, took time to get to know people deeply, you know, the small little gestures of buying a coffee, okay, has created, in one instance alone, a client that is for life.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was the other 10 guys in the office all smashing out 400 calls. And do you want to buy a property? No, put the phone. Do you want to buy a property? No, put the phone. And
how many other agents were doing that at the same time?
But the thing that I've taken from that, which I really like, is the fact that you did things differently.
Yeah.
And so you're in a boiler room environment where there's guys that are doing probably God knows whatever they're doing, and there's you taking people for coffee.
Yeah.
Did they see that, like, did they take the piss out of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Croissant boy.
Croissant boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who are you taking out for today? There was one, whenever it was a female, they were like, oh yeah, it's only because he fancies them.
And like, you're just doing it for the business.
I was just doing it for the business, yeah. And there were people that were, you know, in those days, everybody was in banking.
Yeah.
Friends of mine were also traders and investment bankers. So I was building a network of people that I knew, and which eventually paid off as well when I went to stay in Hong Kong for a bit and work out there, because some of the guys knew people that I knew, and they introduced me to other people, and it just, like, you know, rolled. So
I love that.
Yeah, but I wasn't like the normal estate agent. You know, I used to turn up at the time, you know, everybody had bad shoes and bad suits, and I'd turn up in like a 3-piece with either a bow tie or a tie with a pocket square matching, or they'd be like, whoa.
Love that. It's that whole what's it called? It's got the peacock effect. It is where you're, you know, you stand out in a room. And most people, I actually find especially British people, okay, and I think we put ourselves into that category sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you go to a place and you kind of want to be, you don't want to be recognized. You don't want to be the center of attention. We are so just drilled in to be one of 100. So actually be the one that goes out there and dresses differently and wants to be that peacock, as they say, has driven. You started your personal brand when you in 2003.
Yeah,
that's your personal brand.
Yeah,
you just didn't know it probably at the time.
Well, it's funny because I was listening to Sean Louise's podcast with you guys on the flight last night, and she talked about starting it from very far back, and I was like, oh, I wish I'd have known about it then. You know, I wish I'd met her then.
Yeah.
Let her drum it into me. That you know,
I love that though.
So from being it's not a deep question, but from being like different and dressing differently, have there been situations where, you know, people have taken the piss and you've been in a low spot because you've been different, the black sheep, let's say?
Yeah, I think not so much with clients, but with other people.
Other agents.
Yeah, other agents. And even when I was running my own business, I'm a very open person. Like, I see the good in everybody. And sometimes that can be taken advantage of. I don't know. I feel like I did have good people around me. And a lot of unfortunate things happened in that time, COVID and all the rest of it. But there were I felt that there was some issues that were taken advantage of.
How does that make you feel?
Again, because I see the good in everyone, it hurts me. I'm an empath, so it really does. And also, you know, when it hurts my clients, more so because of how that reflects back on me. And I think that after I had my business for 6 years, Dockley's, and it didn't work, a lot of mistakes were made, and I went into quite a dark place at that time. You know, it was just after COVID. We split up with my girlfriend. I actually went and had a lunch with Danny, And I said to him, I think I'm done. I think I'm just going to go to Ibiza and go and sell ice creams on the beach. And he looked at me and went, what the fuck are you talking about? He went, you've got a name in this industry. You've got a book of business. You've got, go and have a break and get back in the gym. And he actually, I took his advice, got back in the gym and started hitting the gym every morning. And we've talked about my regime in the morning of getting up and going to the gym at 5 o'clock, go and walk around the park, get my head straight. That's literally switched it. Wow. And all of a sudden I was like, hang on, I can do this and I do know what I'm doing. And, I have got the experience. And now where I am and people that reach out to me and say, oh, Adam, this might be something for you. It then starts to bring it back. And I think that it's been a long slog to get back there. But yeah, I was in a really dark place.
So after you were in Canary Wharf for 5 years, you then went up and set up your...
No, so I worked at a company called Alex Neil in Canary Wharf, set up a couple of offices for them. Then I got headhunted, worked with a company called Selby's, who Joe and Alan, they got bought out by CBRE. I was never really again, because I'm not that way inclined. Didn't want to be in a corporate world. Everyone was like, oh, you're going to be an associate director. And I was like, all right, what does that mean? More paperwork? I was like, no, I just want to sell houses, thanks. And so I went and set up a company with a client of mine, actually, this guy, Jimmy, who is an amazing character, an Irish guy who was an investor, bought a load of property for his friends and contacts and stuff. And we basically had a book of management that we were running and we were selling his stock. He bought through us, he bought a big chunk of a development in Canary Wharf, and then we took that back and sold it out to Asia, and we opened an office in Hong Kong. The girl that was meant to be running the Hong Kong office got pregnant. She went back to Spain. I went out there, helped them do all that, and so I mean, literally for about 2 years, I was on flights to Hong Kong, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur. Constantly.
That is wicked. So let's not just skip over this, because this is this is an epic section of your life.
It was pretty epic.
One, I've got loads of questions. Again, you've already shown, I think already, that you are happy to take yourself out your comfort zone and do something different.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it came to your business partner saying, look, we need to go out to Asia, what was your first thoughts in your head?
Well, I think because I knew a lot of clients from that part of the world, I just thought, okay, I'd been to Thailand before on a holiday. That was my first experience of Asia. I was like, yeah, let's go. Great. That's superb. So we went out on a couple of trips, taking UK stock, selling it out there. And I remember being in the exhibition centre. So my trip would be, leave London on Thursday night after work, fly to Hong Kong, get there just before lunchtime, discuss what we're going to do with the team, go out with the client, get back home at whatever time, get up, brief the team, do the exhibition. The client will take you out again if you'd had a successful day. God knows what time you get in that day. Then you're going to do the whole exhibition again. Then you get on a flight, you fly back to London, you get off the flight at 6 a.m. and go straight to the office and work until you fall over.
Wow.
That was my weekends for, probably 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Wow.
But because I knew people out there, I'd sort of spoken to a few people and they were like, yo, you're going to love it. It's great, blah, blah, blah. And I remember being in the room for the first time, and I sell everything as if I'm selling a country house. So I'm selling you on the local area, the schools, the demographics, everything that I think lifestyle, because that's how I've been taught how to sell property. It's a lifestyle, and you're buying a home, and basically one of the boys from JLL sort of whispered in my ear and went, all they're interested in is the amount of rent they're going to receive, what their yield's going to be, and what the capital appreciation is. No one cares about the cafe around the corner. Yeah.
So did you change tactic?
I had to change tactic very quickly, because I was sitting there thinking, why are they not taking any notice of me?
Yeah.
They're all like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, thanks, mate. Nice, thanks for coming. So then I understood it, and then I'd sat and built a spreadsheet so that I could put the number in of what they were paying, and it would ping out all the information at the end.
Nice.
Which I actually pinched off of someone else.
Yeah.
One of the big companies we were working with in collaboration in Singapore, they put it up on a big spreadsheet on a screen, and I was like, oh, can I pinch this? And they were like, yeah, fine. So I literally, that's how I did it, because, sitting there and it was almost like a dealing room, because they're asking you questions, and then they're on, the people are on their apps and going, well, on Rightmove, this was up for this sale, and this, how much is this going for? And so you have to be very on the ball, very sharp.
And how was it dealing with a completely different, demographic?
It wasn't, because a lot of my previous sales had been to Asian clients that would come in here and buy in.
Yeah.
So I sort of I'd sort of already worked out how to look after them, and again, that even more, when we talk about building relationships with people, even more so. Like, as soon as I'd built relationships with these people, they're introducing me to everybody.
Yeah.
And I'd been invited over to Singapore to play golf. We were talking about golf earlier. I played Sentosa Island, and I played, tennis with people, and it was amazing. And they were introducing me to friends and family, and I was getting calls from people that I'd never heard from. Oh, so and so gave me this number. I've literally just done a deal this year with a client that was introduced to me by the owner of the parent company in Singapore, the agency, because in Singapore you can't open an agency unless you're Singaporean.
Yep.
So the company we used to collab with, the owner, who I'd met once briefly, shook his hand at an event, he'd introduced this guy to me that was his friend.
Wicked.
And like, I've looked after them for 5 years as a family. I thought I put a post on my Instagram the other day.
I love that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
What was the one thing that you learned from that experience? What's the one takeaway that you think, do you know what, or what did you pick up out there? Or what was the one you were like, fuck, that's a good idea?
You can't be one dimensional in your tact, in your sales pitch. You have to understand who you're pitching to. And that, again, helped me when I came back here with clients now, because obviously, most of our clients are from all over the place. So do your research on them before you meet them, and understand who you're walking into and what they're liable to be asking you.
Such a great tip.
So what does that look like for you? You get introduced to a client. What does your research look like on the back end before you meet them?
Can't give away trade secrets.
That's why we do this podcast.
We might be pitching on the same thing.
Just pretend the cameras are off, right? Just pretend the cameras are off.
I'll Google, Instagram now, obviously, and LinkedIn, and just to understand, what industry they work in, where I can find something that's a common interest, or maybe they like a similar football team. I think
and you can drop that into conversation.
Yeah. As long as they like Arsenal, we're all right.
Did you do your research before?
No, I know.
I love that. But no, we speak about it a lot, don't we? And again, never in my first 5, 6, 7 years of agency did I ever research the buyer I was about to meet, the potential seller I was just about to meet. It was just you just never learned that, did you?
No, but I think we're in a fortunate position where we have a bit more. I mean, we don't have time, but we do have time, because we're not doing hundreds of calls, hundreds of viewings. So whereas if we'd have had that conversation and we were selling, back in Hertfordshire, and just doing numbers, you wouldn't have time to do that.
Yeah.
You might do with your client, but not with a buyer, because, you turn up and you've got 25 buyers. You're not going to know every single one of them. So it is, I think that goes with the territory.
Yeah.
And when you've got a bit more time, and you can do that. So, anybody listening that's sitting there in their office thinking, oh my God, I've got 500 people registered on my applicant list. How am I ever going to know everybody?
How can I bring 500 coffees like Adam did?
Don't do that.
I'm going to need that prep membership. I love that. And look, I think the next thing we wanted to talk about was this game and our careers is not all just fun and games and selling luxury properties. You had Dockley's, and ultimately Dockley's. You stopped trading. Why did Dockley's stop trading? Why did it fail, like you said earlier?
I took my eye off the ball. I took my eye off the ball when it came to the finances, and I thought that I could trade my way through a situation, because I'd always traded my way out of it, and it didn't work. So I had to own up and take the responsibility for it, and it was an extremely hard lesson. And I think the biggest thing for me was it wasn't so much the failure of me failing, which really hurt because obviously it had my name above the door and my family name above the door, which means a lot to me. It was that I lost some really dear clients throughout that situation who could have been prevented if I'd have acted differently. That really hurt.
So what things would you have done differently so people can perhaps...
What would I have done differently? I would have been a lot tighter with the purse strings. I would have been a lot more involved in the finance side of the operation. Whereas, and I've realized, and hence why I didn't go and set up another company straight away, that I'm not a finance guy. I'm a meter greeter. I'm an introducer. I'm a deal maker. You know, I've met you. You like this, but I know this house over here that I think is going to be better for you. Let's go and have a look at that. That's what I'm good at. The back end office stuff, I said from the very start of doing it, I felt like I needed a partner. And I needed that person behind me that was the, you know, sweeper upper, doing all the bits and pieces that I wasn't capable of doing. But I had this burning desire in my chest that I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to run my own. I started a brokerage before brokerages were brokerages, you know, like this is 2016, you know, and everyone's sort of going to me, what? They're not employed. And I'm like, no, you just get paid a salary, but you don't get paid a salary. So you just get paid commission, but these are huge commissions. And a lot of the guys that I was working with were just selling my stock. They weren't going out and getting their own stock. And I think that would have made a lot of difference. And if I'd have pushed that, but at the time, I was involved with some huge regeneration projects, and I took my eye off the ball.
It's really interesting because we are all learning, aren't we? You know, and we make mistakes every week. And actually, you have to make mistakes to learn and grow and get better. You know, we use the analogy of the gym, even I think in our Monday meeting, didn't we? That you go to the gym to break down your muscles and then they grow. You know, if you don't break them down and have those bad moments, then they don't grow.
So true.
And it's exactly the same in life and business. And we've all been through them, you know, previous businesses that have folded, and you learn from those mistakes. But it's really key. One thing that's what I take from that is that we're not good at everything.
No.
And actually the best leaders out there, you know, if you look at Richard Branson, you know, and there's that video clip of Richard Branson not knowing the difference between gross and net profit.
Net profit,
You know, and he's got people around him that he employs because they're better at that, you know. And when you try to take on too much, you let slip off the plates which you're really good at, and ultimately over time that can, you know, falter a business.
And I felt that did happen because I stopped doing what I was doing. I stopped being that face. I stopped going out and meeting people, and I was just concentrating on certain things that I was trying to build in the business. And I was very fortunate. I had my father who just had a business as well that was for self-employed. He was a policeman, and then he left the force and set up a business called Outforce, which when they were taking the guys that were retiring, and then they would be investigating.
Nice.
One of the DVLA was their biggest client, and so really interesting stuff. And so I had him to bounce off, but he'd never been an estate agent. He'd never run a property business. He'd never, you know, so, and he also had partners. So as much as he was an amazing sort of person to lean on a little bit, it wasn't direct. It was like, you know, and obviously he's thinking about my welfare and me rather than the business. And, you know, whereas if you had someone that was a partner, you can be like bouncing off them, you know. And I think that if I did it again, I'd definitely do it with someone else.
And did you not have a mentor in the industry or someone that you could lean on in the industry?
I did. And they were telling me, you know, you've just got to be careful, you know, just watch where everything's going, you know. And I was like, yep. But I was a young buck that was keen to just take over the world because I was doing something that no one else was doing, thinking to myself, like, my sheer determination and ballsiness was just gonna get me through it. And I think that is another takeaway, is that no matter how confident you are of your ability, it's not always about your ability. It's about the other people around you, and you know, and so, you know, just you need to be.
You referenced earlier that you were in a bit of a dark place from it. and we talk about mental health a lot. How did it really affect you behind the closed doors when you were sat there at 9, 10 o'clock at night?
I couldn't sleep. For like months, and I'd wake up panicking, you know, thinking, what have I done? You know, I've done something wrong, like playing things back in my head, going through figures in my, or I was sitting there waking up at night, going through my laptop, like just almost looking for a problem to solidify the fact that I'd screwed up. So yeah, I mean, it was, it was really dark.
So do you think in hindsight, and now where you are at London House, that maybe that was the best thing to happen?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just part of your...
growth. Yeah.
Part of your journey.
100%. Now I don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
I don't have to get involved in office politics, anything. Like, done. See you later. I do my deals. I put my invoice in. I'm happy.
Because it's so funny, because when something goes wrong, people will think their life is over. And
I did. Genuinely.
And you did.
Yeah.
And you know, most people do, but then you don't realize that this is just part of your journey to get to your end goal, wherever that may be.
Yeah.
That sometimes that when shit hits the fan, I actually saw Remy in our office. She's got on her phone, her screensaver is "This too shall pass."
Yeah.
That you get so, you know, bogged down on the shit that is happening that you actually lose sight of what could come out of it. And now you're doing amazing things.
Yeah. And I used to read that to myself.
Did you?
Almost every day. I'd had that specific quote.
Wow.
Like, I can't remember who said it. It was a famous actor said it in a podcast. And I was just like, yeah, eventually this will pass. Yeah. Like you'll be old news and people have forgotten about it, and you know, the new birth and you know, crack on.
And we've obviously spoken about it before, and you briefly touched on it, your morning routine. Okay. Just tell everybody what your morning routine is.
It's not every morning. I want to just get this straight.
Okay,
it's
well,
not every morning.
morning.
And it's funny because one of my best friends always says to me, if it's not on Instagram, you didn't do it.
Yeah. I love that. But this helped you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like I mean, obviously you had that, you had obviously that chat with Danny, and I'm sure there's other influential people around you.
Yep.
But this really helped you kind of think, fuck it, I can get out of this. Tell everybody.
So I'd wake up and the first thing I'd do is smile. Like literally the first thing I'd do is smile and thank that I've got up and I've woke up and I'm happy and I'm healthy and all my family are healthy, and like, you know, be grateful for being alive. And then and that would normally happen about 4:45. Gym stuff on, down the gym, do an hour. My friend Alex very kindly put a training program together, which I still use on his app. Thank you. Little plug. And then I walk around the park and I manifest my perfect life in my head. Like, I can walk you through my villa in Ibiza. Like, I could tell you everything about that day, what I'm doing, who I'm with, you know, where I'm working, what the business is doing, everything. And it would take the hour, literally. By the time I got back to the car, I'd just finished. And I still do that once a week now. Exactly the same manifestation. And then I'd come back and I'd write out all the things that I've got to do that day, a list, handwritten. I did start to journal, but my ADHD got the better of me. And it worked for about a month, and then I was just like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And then I'll start my day. But the thing for me was, I had to jump on the day. I was up and I this little thing that I'd take the mickey out of, it's an up and Adam. I used to hashtag up and Adam.
Love that. Love that.
But I literally thought that, well, I was up ready and fresh before everybody else started. I was out making calls and meeting people before, you know, and the walk thing, you know, I've continued that through. And, you know, I say to clients, like, if you want to meet, we'll go for a walk. Or people like that I'm meeting in the industry, let's grab a coffee and go for a walk.
I love that.
Because you're moving and you're seeing things, and like, if you just sit in a coffee shop, you'll talk and you'll get to the point, and you know, hopefully it doesn't, but you might get to the point we run out of things to talk about. Whereas if you're walking around, there's, you know, it's inspirational, right?
And you get seen by other people as well, bump into other people.
Yeah,
mate, exactly. I think it's wicked. I mean, we've been talking about the gym more and more, and you know, it's not a cheat, is it? That, you know, you go to the gym in the morning, you feel better, but Mate, I cannot describe how much better in my mindset, my body, the way I feel, the energy that I've got, how much better I feel by getting in that gym at 6 a.m. every morning.
Every morning?
5 days a week.
Smashed it. Yeah.
And I even on the days when I don't do it, I almost feel like I would like you. I'll go for a walk.
Yeah.
I'll do something else. I'll go for a walk in the evening.
Yeah.
I will do something which is a little bit more physical exercise or getting out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a cheat code for life.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. Yeah.
But that's I love that. I think that's absolutely wicked.
Yeah. But it's a balance as well.
Of course it is. It's a balance.
Because, I, as well as I've always been out and about and partying and that's always been part of me.
Yeah.
I'm not hiding away from the fact that for 25 years I absolutely smashed it.
Yeah.
And didn't sleep. And people always say to me, "You look really good for your age." And I'm like, "Well, don't sleep and you'll be fine."
Yeah. That's the key.
That's the key. But I feel like that I have to have that balance because I think and then I see a lot of people now that just do that, and I'm like, that's a coil.
Yeah.
Right. That's a coil that's turning and turning and turning and turning and turning. Where's your release? There's got to be something that takes you,
Yeah. And so, okay, another question. I think a lot of people after coming out of Dockley's would have said, oh, fuck it, do you know what? I'm just going to go and find an employed job and it'll be easy because I'll get my basic salary and like there'll be a certain number of food instructions on the table and then I'll just, I'm going to play it easy. Like I think 90% of people would have done that. Okay. You went straight into obviously joining London House, which is exactly like Benji and I, self-employed broker underneath the brokerage, which is London House, great company. Did you ever think to yourself, should I just play it easy?
Yeah, I still do now. I still think about it now. I didn't go straight back into so London House. I joined within the last year. Prior to that, I was working with some friends out in Hertfordshire, and then they got bought out. But I, all the way through that, I was like, shall I just go and get a job? And then I was like, I don't know that I could do that now. I don't know that I work on my terms. Or my terms are I work 24/7. But like if someone says to me, "Oh, come and do this now," I'll do it now. Do you know what I mean? But I did think, should I just take the easy route? But it is an easy route, and I feel like I deserve to give this more. I deserve to give this industry more of me than being in a number in an office. I actually wake up with palpitations that I work in an office behind a desk. Like literally, I wake up in the middle of the night sweating, like, nightmare. Oh my God, I've got to make 500 calls today. Like it is a nightmare. Like, I couldn't do it.
And does that tie in with your bio on your Instagram that says the anti-agent?
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to be as far away from a typical estate agent the norm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I want to offer my clients something different. I've just come back from Ibiza. I've been looking at some amazing villas and I looked at some of the media that they were working with and I'm like, I would absolutely tear it a new one. Like the stuff that I've got going on in my head, when I was sitting on the plane, I was writing down notes and I'm like, oh, you got to do this. We got to do this. And
love that.
I just want to have some fun with it as well. This is such a stiff industry, obviously we're dealing with, the biggest asset that most people own, but let's try and make it a little bit enjoyable, like buying for people. Like I love buying for people because I feel like I've got 30 years of experience, knowledge, contacts that I can put out, and anywhere in London, anywhere in the southeast of England or in Ibiza, I can put my hand on things that most agents can't, and get information about things that you wouldn't get if you were just Joe Bloggs walking in off the street talking to an estate agent. Oh no, how do I do a deal here? Well, I can actually have a conversation with you guys and say, how do we get a deal done here?
So to give some value to the people that are watching, because we have a lot of younger of the generations that watch us as well, that either are outside of London or in London in the corporate world, what, let's say, 2 pieces of advice would you say that you would say to them in terms of the anti-agent thing to guide them?
I think you've got to learn the basics first. And I think that I work with a lot of people that went through the Foxtons system. And I think, and probably similar with you with Knight Frank, that, you know, you learn the basics. So if I've had conversations with multiple people recently that have all said, oh, I'd love to do what you do. And I'm like, okay, fine, but do 4 or 5 years learning how this business works, meet people, like make sure. And one piece of information my friend Lauren gave me when I was leaving my first ever business, she said, put everybody on your Instagram or your LinkedIn, because then they're your clients. So everybody goes on that. So I would, that would be my negative advice. Be authentically you. You know, I think Sian said the same thing when she was here. It's like, don't try and be you guys, be you. Do you know what I mean? It's you have to be you, and you have to be authentic. And if you've got a lot of energy, push that. You know, be involved. Say to people like, I'll come and meet you. I'll do this, and you need to go that extra mile. I've always thought to myself, like, if I can do anything more I can do, I'll do it, because I was taught from a very young age, you know, go that extra mile and you'll always be remembered. So if it means going down and, you know, opening the loft because they want to go and see it and it's like 8 o'clock at night, do it. You know, and just work hard.
I love that. One thing that I, funny enough, just before I came here, I was giving some advice to a client, and I said, we're all now marketing agencies that just happen to specialize in property. It's a phrase that we use a lot, isn't it, Benji? And she was like, yeah, you're right. And she could tell that the clogs were going in her mind, that she'd never really heard that before. But I mean, we think it's true. And what you have expressed just then is exactly that. We shouldn't just be in an industry where you just take a photo from the corner of the room and stick it onto a portal and open up a door. Like, we are having to market homes here now, which are some of the most expensive homes across the globe. And we have to be creative.
Well, and also, again, we're going back to the lifestyle thing. You know, if you want to live in London and you're not necessarily, you might have been to London a few times, but you're not necessarily, you don't know those different parts of London and what that is there. And I think we all fall foul of not giving enough information about, like, I love area guides. I thought, you know, Foxtons and Hamptons and people like that do it all the time. I mean, they're pretty basic. I think if you could do a video that goes alongside your property video or incorporate it, like I do. I try and do a little bit about the area, schools, the shops, the bars, the restaurants, all that sort of stuff. It is a lifestyle.
And I like what you said before in terms of the reason why you came back into it was because you feel that you had more to give to the industry and to your clients. And I feel as agents trying to do things differently, I feel I need to do more than what is just the basic, as you said, in terms of just photos and floor plans.
100%.
Like, it's so basic and our clients expect more than that. Should we do our...
Okay, so Ad, this is where we just do some quick fire questions, okay? These are normally asked by the viewers. They normally comment, send us messages. So these are a couple of questions. This is the first time that we look at them, isn't it, as well, like picking it up. So Benj, do you wanna start with your first question?
Sure. What is one common mistake you are seeing buyers making in the property market right now?
Not having a buying agent.
Great question. And it is quick fire. So I don't know why we're pausing.
Anything else?
No, it's a great one.
Like, why wouldn't you pay for someone to look after you? Right? The agent's not on your side.
Well,
So you're just running around in this little...
Love that. Ad, if you weren't in the real estate industry today, what would you be doing?
What would I like to be doing? Or what would I like to be doing? I'd love to be a DJ.
DJ. Love that. Love that.
I love music.
Love that.
If you could pick one place to live that wasn't London, where would it be?
I think we know the answer to this.
It begins with an I.
It begins with an I, and it's a little island, Ibiza, 100%.
And because you've got family out there, haven't you, as well?
My sister lives there. Yeah,
I love that. Family. Okay. Personal branding, I often phrase as, if I wasn't in a room, okay, and someone said Oliver Ingalls, it's how they would describe me, okay, if I wasn't there. In one sentence, how would you want to be described if you weren't in the room?
High energy, honest, knowledgeable.
Love that.
Experienced. I think that I feel like my experience in this industry is so vast. I've done a lot of different things, from buying buildings, development, new builds, commercial, regeneration. I feel that I can, if people say my name, they feel they can, lean on me for experience.
Can I give you my honest answer to that question?
Is it going to be tall, dark, and handsome?
I think that's a byproduct of who you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone experience all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. I think everyone gets that. But I think people would say he's a genuinely nice guy and will always have your best interests at heart.
Oh, thank you.
Benj?
I mean, it's such a shit question, I'd say. Could have been
So
so great.
What's your favourite colour?
My question was, because obviously there's a huge side of you that is the human intelligence side rather than AI, artificial intelligence. Where do you think, and do you think AI could negatively impact our real estate sector?
If they build a bot that can build relationships, I feel that the only thing it can't do is build personal relationships. If they can build a me that can build personal relationships with people, then we're in trouble.
So
And empathy.
I think someone in our WhatsApp group put a link to an article that showed that your average human has something like 56% score rating on emotional intelligence.
Right.
And the AI has now 65%. So higher emotional intelligence than humans.
Is it going to be able to throw that in with a load of jokes?
Not.
Yeah.
Well,
Guess we'll find out.
Ad, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Honestly,
really appreciate it.
it's been great listening to your story. I think there's been some really great tips, like some really hidden nuggets in there. And it's been, really good to have you on. I'm really pleased that you've joined us today. And thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
As well. So for the people watching,
yeah,
where do they find Adam Dockley if they're looking on digital platforms and in real life?
In Ibiza.
In Ibiza, yeah.
Or walking around the park
yeah,
at 4
walking
a.m.
around the park at 4 a.m. Victoria Park, 4 o'clock, no. So Adam_Dockley on Instagram, and then Chewing the Flat on TikTok.
Chewing the Flat.
As in FLAT.
Love that. That's wicked. Ad, thank you ever so much for
Pleasure.
coming on, bro.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciated it.
Cheers.